What up, cooks? A lot of people have emailed me requesting me to do this video. Now, I did something like this in the past, but now I'm doing it again because people ask for it. And this video is about how Paul Heyman is an overrated ass. Now, a lot of people are under the impression that Paul Heyman is this revolutionary wrestling figure. I'm here to tell you that you're wrong and that he's not. Number one, Paul Heyman apparently still owes money to people from ECW. I mean, whatever, it is what it is. They're not going to get the money. Nobody cares, right? But conceptually, from what I understand, I've seen in several documentaries, people saying Paul Heyman still owes me money. Okay, so there's that. That proves in and of itself that Paul Heyman isn't good at wrestling and promoting wrestling, because if he did, he'd be a huge success. In fact, he was a colossal failure. Even though he had so many good stars, he was a colossal failure because he doesn't understand business, I guess, and quite honestly, he just doesn't understand how wrestling works, in my opinion, right? Now, with all that being said, a lot of the praise that Heyman gets now, right, is not because of what he did in ECW, or what he didn't do in ECW, I should say. A lot of it hinges upon the idea, right, that Paul Heyman is this kingmaker manager. And I'm here to tell you that he ain't, motherfucks. He ain't. Think about it. If you take a manager and you look at what successes and failures they've had, you also have to consider what part of that success can be attributed to the manager versus the wrestler versus any other ancillary force, right? Let's start with Paul Heyman's first significant management role, Brock Lesnar, right? Now, Brock Lesnar, contrary to popular belief, is charismatic. Now, he's not good on the mic, right? But he is charismatic because he walks by and you're like, what the fuck? That guy's so cool, right? He just looks cool, right? He's got the big badass tattoo. He kicks ass, right? When it's time to be funny, he can be funny. You know, he has something there, right? But more importantly, he's just beastly and just very good in the ring historically, right? So with that being said, Paul Heyman definitely did help put Brock Lesnar over. That is his biggest success by far. By far. It's not even close, right? Brock Lesnar was over for so long and continues to be over, largely because Paul Heyman presented him as like the beast, right? Not because he managed him or anything like that. Not because he cut the same promo he's been cutting for like 35 years, but because Paul Heyman selected Brock Lesnar. Paul Heyman was ousted from the company, kayfabe-wise, because ECW lost, right? They lost to, ECW, the Alliance, lost to WWE, and he's wiggled his way back in, right? The underpinnings of the Brock Lesnar character were that this is also the way that Paul Heyman puts his foot back in the door, right? Paul Heyman comes back through Brock Lesnar, right? And the idea is Brock Lesnar is undeniable. So at this point, even Vince, who presumably would hate Paul Heyman, kayfabe, right, is going to tolerate him to get Brock Lesnar, right? Now, with all that being said, could Brock Lesnar have done it on his own? Of course. It goes without saying. Kane got over, and he didn't say a word for the first 10 years of his career. So that's not the point, though. That is when Paul Heyman got this, Paul Heyman guy thing started, right? Then CM Punk cuts the promo where he says, I'm a Paul Heyman guy. And what happens then? Paul Heyman appears to think that CM Punk is great. They hire him. He manages CM Punk, who was already champion, right? Paul Heyman does this a lot. He joins the party too late, right? And he adds absolutely nothing to CM Punk's reign. If anything, he detracts from it. Name one thing that Paul Heyman did to make CM Punk's reign better. Absolutely nothing. The only thing he was there for was to inevitably screw CM Punk over. Then what happened? While he was with CM Punk, he starts building this faction, right? I mean, not a faction, but, the Paul Heyman guys. He starts managing certain people. First, he starts managing Curtis Axel, which we all know is not a successful wrestler in WWE. Then, and in my opinion, Curtis Axel got way more over as part of the B team, as well as the whole skull thing that he kept doing, right? Leaning on his Minnesota upbringing. Even Axelmania got more over. So Curtis Axel is a great example because in every iteration that Curtis Axel did something by himself, he was more over than when he was with Heyman. Ryback, same thing, right? They take Ryback and they try to make him into a Paul Heyman guy. it fails completely. He becomes a jobber. Ryback and Curtis Axel become a tag team. They get themselves over, right? And then they get disbanded, and Ryback gets repackaged once again as Ryback without Paul Heyman, and he's over again immediately with the feed me more, right? So that's two colossal failures right there, right? Then Cesaro. Don't forget, Cesaro was a Paul Heyman guy at some point, and that did not work out. Think about that, cucks. Then Paul Heyman, after failure and failure and failure, hitches his trailer to the fastest moving train maybe ever in WWE history, Roman Reigns. And ask yourself this. What in the blue hell has Paul Heyman added to the bloodline? The only thing you can say is that he just makes them naturally heel, right? That's it. Beyond that, he adds nothing. He has been cutting the same promo for both Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns for 10 years. It's not a great promo, and he doesn't do what he says. He says he's the advocate, but he never advocates for anybody. All he does, he's the ring announcer. Say it like it is, cucks. Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns need a ring announcer. So they got Paul Heyman. He does not do anything otherwise. Now, with all this being said, can Paul Heyman get it done? Right? Fortunately for him, most people are too dumb to realize that he sucks. Because wrestling fans just, we've talked about this. So most people are going to automatically give a boost to whomever joins Paul Heyman next. All signs appear to be pointing at Braun Breaker. This is the time when Paul Heyman can finally shine. The storyline should be this. Braun Breaker destroys everybody. Braun Breaker wins the Royal Rumble. Obviously, this is assuming Roman Reigns beats that cuckold Cody Rhodes. Braun Breaker then becomes him, right? Eventually, not at WrestleMania, wherever, who cares? Eventually, Braun Breaker joins Paul Heyman, and eventually Braun Breaker beats Roman Reigns. That's the only logical way to use Paul Heyman. Every other way has been a considerable failure. Now, Braun Breaker is a little bit like Brock Lesnar. Not to the same level. I'm not going to sit here. I mean, Braun Breaker is probably my favorite wrestler right now, but he's not as good as Brock Lesnar. Let's be real, right? He's not as big. Like, he's actually not that big. He's like 6'1", 6'2". Like, if you put him next to like Obafemi, right? It's like you can believe that Braun Breaker might beat his ass just because Braun Breaker just looks like a tough guy. And, honestly, because his father and uncle are the Steiners, who were tough guys, right? And he's also athletic and he's big enough. But it's like you would think, if you didn't know all this, you'd be like, Obafemi probably would whoop his ass, right? Whereas with Brock Lesnar, you would not think that. You'd be like, Brock Lesnar would destroy this guy, right? Because he's bigger than fucking Braun Breaker. But nevertheless, Braun Breaker is the next big thing in my opinion. And with that being said, he should be branded as such. He should be branded as the next big thing, Braun Breaker. And during this conquest, he should also beat Lesnar, right? And Paul Heyman should basically say, I finally found the guy. The same way that I found Brock Lesnar, and the same way that I found Roman, I'm now finding the guy. Again, right? This would, of course, be a lie, but it doesn't matter, because in kayfabe, everything's possible. That's the only way, in my opinion, that Paul Heyman can redeem himself over the disaster that was Curtis Axel, and that was Cesaro, and that was the other Ryback, right? Complete failures. And then, of course, I don't want to attribute, like the failure of Jimmy Uso to him. That would be unreasonable. But he is associated with those guys. So if the shoe fits, cucks, you must wear it, right? So in summation, Paul Heyman is not a good wrestling mind because he failed in ECW. Paul Heyman is not a good wrestling manager because he failed in managing several stars that were going to be given pushes, right? It was almost weird when he started pushing Curtis Axel, because I'm like, really? Like, I remember when he came out, they're like, Curtis Axel, and I'm like, wait a second. Michael McGillicuddy is now going to be like a serious threat. And even though he got an insane push, one of the biggest pushes of all time, I would argue, Curtis Axel got. He beat Triple H like clean like 3 times and became Intercontinental Champion in like the first month of his career. Eventually, like the fallout was that he's just not good enough, so get wrecked. And with that being said, Paul Heyman can also get wrecked. Cooks!